My fellow Americans, just like many of you, my family and I are social distancing. And it's important that everyone take this seriously so that we can beat this thing. And Joe, if you're watching this, 6-foot distance from everyone, buddy. Actually, that's probably a good rule for you to follow at all times. But anyway, Michelle and I are doing fine. But we did just run out of good shows to watch on Netflix. I gotta tell you though, I just started reading up on this whole Bitcoin thing, and boy oh boy, I think I'm falling down the, what do you Bitcoiners call it? Falling down the rabbit hole. As Michelle and I waited 3 hours just to get inside Costco, we ran into this gentleman who did a hell of a job pitching Bitcoin to us. Jameson Lopp was his name, a real stand-up guy. And he has a great website full of resources. I'm learning so much. I just listened to the Audible of the Bitcoin Standard from Sapien the Moose, and I just started Jan Pritzker's book, Inventing Bitcoin. Michelle, if you're ordering more supplies, you better be checking on deals on Lolly and Fold. We need to be stacking sats. Yes, whenever we can, damn it. Stacking sats, right? Am I saying that right? Sup, freaks. Anyway, folks, I just thought I'd share with you what I'm learning. But basically, in the words of the great Murray Rothbard, what has the government done to our money? The more I learn about how we've screwed up the money, the more obvious it is to me that Bitcoin fixes this. There are just so many misconceptions about Bitcoin. But America, I've decided it's time I help clear up those misconceptions. For example, I used to think Bitcoin wasted all this energy. But today, I heard this real all-American guy from Philly. His name's Marty Bent. He's got this podcast, and I heard him explain perfectly and rationally how Bitcoin is actually good for the environment. Heck, it's the real new Green Deal. I don't know about you, America, but I'm a believer in this Bitcoin thing. Might be a good idea for me to get some in case this thing catches on. Well, folks, my fellow citizens, I'm going to continue doing my own research, but stay safe and stay tuned. Michelle, did my VR headset arrive? I need it for Udi's VR Bitcoin meetup. What? Normally you can't borrow it. This Bitcoin thing's important. How many times I gotta tell you?
Is the audio on? All right, guys. Welcome to the fourth Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour. We got a awesome panel here, all mining experts, people in the industry. Special thank you to Luxor Mining Pool and Ethan in particular, who really helped wrangle this all-star cast. We're gonna have a good time talk about mining altcoins. I don't care. Can't shill them, otherwise you gotta drink. Next, this is gonna be a tough one, and it's experimental, but no saying Bitcoin. So if you want to say Bitcoin, you need to think of some other way to express your love to the corn. So cheers to that. I'm gonna drink since I said Bitcoin. And last is you can't say drink, so I'm gonna drink 3 times.
He's having the best time of all of us.
Cheers. So those are the rules. We might as well start out with some intros. I guess first on my left we have Ethan from Luxor. Why don't you introduce yourself and then let's just kind of go down the line.
Great. Yeah. So I help operate a Seattle-based mining pool. We operate 11 different crypto mining coins right now. I won't shill 10 of them, but one of them is BTC. So check us out.
Let's go, Christy.
Yep, I'm Christy Lee Minahan. I've been involved in mining for about 10 years. Genesis Mining, Core Scientific, and I am involved with cryptocurrency as a whole.
Cool. Wes.
Sure. I'm Wes Fulford. I spent the last couple of years, up until about 4 weeks ago, running a public company up here in Canada, which is Bitfarms, and large cell phone miner operating out of Quebec, and got a couple of new projects underway.
Awesome. Well, Stealth JP.
I am the CEO of Mining Store, and I've been mining digital currencies since I was 14 years old in high school, and that was in 2012, 2013. Come a long way, and now it's building some new cool mining facilities and some cool new products for the industry that hopefully we build it up.
All right, Harry. You're muted.
Director of Strategy at Grid Infrastructure. We're an American-based Bitcoin miner, and we've been in operation since 2018. We're excited with a few new sites that are going to be coming online over the summer.
Already bet. Oh. Sorry, go for it.
Probably the least experienced miner on this panel. I even feel a little disrespectful referring to myself as a miner, but I do work for a company, Great American Mining. We are basically attempting to solve a flare mitigation issue that oil and gas companies have in North America with mining, particularly Satoshi's child. So I do a little business development for them, and that's my spiel.
Sweet. Let's go to Alejandra.
Yeah, so I'm VP of Poolin. It's a mining pool that mines BTC and many other coins. Before that, I worked at BTC.com. I was co-founder there, so I've been in mining for about 4 or 5 years now.
Let's go. Wit.
Yep, I'm the CEO of Hashrate. We're a software provider for ASICs and GPUs, and also I'm the host of Hashrate Podcast, I would say the industry standard for the Bitcoin and crypto mining podcast space. So,
take a sip. Cheers, Kevin.
Hey guys, I've been in mining space since about 2015. I've been building data center projects all across the world, and my latest one has been with a power plant upstate New York, where we have our very own Bitcoin mining facility. Cheers.
Ooh, you may have heard about him in the mail. Oh, sorry, not the mail. In the news, Greenwich on Bloomberg. Yeah,
that's right.
All right, y'all. I mean, like, what are people thinking about right now? How are people doing?
Tired. It's 2:30 in the morning over here, and I've been drinking beer, trying to waiting for this.
We have some hardcore miners. These guys on the right, Alejandro and Wei, are over in Europe, and they're staying up quite late to join us. So thanks, guys. I guess since you guys have been waiting the longest, why don't you guys start off with some first words? Like, what are you guys thinking about in these times with mining, with crypto, with COVID, all that?
Take it away, Alejandro.
Okay.
Always play. Go for it, man.
Definitely looking into or expecting the halving coming up. That's been on everyone's mind. A lot of people have been asking us what's going to happen, how many miners are going to switch off, how much hash rate is going to leave. The COVID issue has really messed up a lot of stuff for many mining farms in terms of buying new machines or receiving new machines. It's definitely been there's two sides to this coin. There's either some mining farms have actually a better time now, because now their competitors don't have the new machines that they ordered a while ago. So they're actually they're mining and they're making good money. They're making good money because of that. On the other hand, the other mining farms are suffering. So as for pooling, we're doing well. We're growing very fast. I think the halving is going to be challenging, but I think we'll pull through.
Is this a supply chain issue just for like North America and Europe? Like, are Chinese mining farms still getting their hands on them?
It's a good question. It's a good thing you bring it up. Actually, we've seen the hash rate increase dramatically over the last couple of days, and there's a lot of rumors now especially coming from China, that the new machine, there's some new rigs that came out, and there's someone's already mining on them, but no one can get them out of Asia, or if they can get them out of China, they can get them out through train or truck. So it's very localized, the mining at the moment. So no one in Europe and US is able to get these new miners, or if they can, it's very expensive. So they probably don't have it. So yeah, it's very much in China now. The big hash rate that came in a couple of days ago.
Interesting. What?
Yeah. What's up, Mad Hatter? Looks like we got somebody that joined us. Yeah, I mean, I think that right now it's really easy to buy into a lot of the negativity that's going on, and obviously, media helps to perpetuate that. I mean, especially in the States, it seems like we're just constantly bombarded with bad news, but there's a lot of opportunities that I think are gonna come out of this. There's a lot of clear industry leaders that'll be established coming out of the current economic situation and everything that's going on in Bitcoin mining specifically. I personally think that 2020 is going to be one of the most exciting years for Bitcoin mining. There's a lot of really cool innovations on the power consumption side. Got a lot of cool things going on the software side. And I will drink because I'm probably going to say Bitcoin a gazillion times, but it's
Bitcoin rules going to wreck people.
Yeah,
it's just a really exciting time. I think there are more companies than ever that are now looking to serve Bitcoin miners, and it's just exciting. Like, I'm not an expert. I'll second Marty's comment. I get to interview experts on a regular basis, and all of them have this like unfailingly positive outlook, and it's contagious. You get around enough people who are excited about where the industry's headed, and you can't help but buy into that hype. So I'm slowly but surely I mean, I know everyone, I think Ethan gave me shit for potentially being the guy that comes on here to shill altcoins, but I am like slowly drifting to the other side of the aisle almost entirely. I have no altcoins to shill at this point, so I'm coming to Marty's side of the table.
Don't leave us, man. Don't leave us.
Ethan, you gotta take a sip for that. just even showing any sort of like empathy towards altcoins.
Wow,
None of
that's
that.
hardcore.
Sorry. It's Bitcoin Magazine. We have a hard standard here.
True.
Cool. Justin, you want to go to some of the questions?
Yeah. Should we just run through them, or should we do the bullish and bearish?
No, let's go questions first. Justin's going to change the slide, and then I guess what's the first one? I forget.
China centralization risk, real or FUD? FUD meaning like used as a marketing ploy.
I guess let's go to Christy first. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, we have. It all depends about around how you define security. So centralization is only a risk if you think that blockchain is insecure if a majority of the users, or to be more correct, a majority of the infrastructure sits in one country. People think, oh, well, the government might shut down my Bitcoin mining operation, and then all the hash rate disappears, and then, Bitcoin might be at risk. However, the government is highly incentivized, especially in China, to keep Bitcoin miners around. They, I think most of them now pay their taxes, at least. So they're paying their taxes, they're consuming a lot of the utilities that otherwise wouldn't be consumed and would just be wasted or idle. And it's contributing revenue. And one of the other things is the government's generally supportive of it because companies like Bitmain and Canaan and Silicon and a few others are also advancing their hardware production in other areas like the AI space. And they're starting to explore alternate business units. And they're using crypto mining as their sole source of initial revenue generation. So the government tends to be pretty supportive of it. And I said Bitcoin during that early on, so drinking time.
Oh, double whammy.
Indeed. It's the space is, I think it is a risk personally. I do believe that it is a bit of a concern for a system that aims to be a replacement for the world financial system if a majority of the infrastructure is concentrated in one country. Whether or not, it will be taken advantage of in 1 year to, in 2 years, maybe in 10 years, that kind of time frame, it's all up in the air. So it's all about, is it a short-term risk or is it a long-term risk?
There. Kevin, let's go to you.
Oh, sure. Putting me on the spot. No, I echo a lot of the same sentiments that Christy shared. But I think another play that China's kind of approaching the crypto mining space with is it's almost like if you want a mining operation that's viable and regulatory compliant, you have to kiss the ring, right? So they're kind of listing out all the regulatory permitting that you have to go through, and they know exactly where on the map you are. So I think the Chinese government, it's not maybe like concentrated strategy, but when the time is right and when they want to move in on crypto and make a definitive statement on it or position, that's when they'll do it. We haven't reached that stage yet, but it's been very hot and cold the last 4 or 5 years, right? China's killed Bitcoin through Bitcoin mining regulatory kind of wishy-washy type policies for the last 4 or 5 years. But I think their approach is, as long as we keep everything in-house, all the manufacturing is done here, all the major companies, the ASIC manufacturers, as long as they're under our roof, we can kind of control the direction of where this industry is going.
Who wants to jump in?
I would jump in on that. So I think there's a couple of different things that I heard already. One of them from Christy is basically that the centralization risk is a function of market cap. So when the honeypot is big enough, then there's going to be a state actor who's going to be able to move in. So it's not a question of will they, it's a question of can they, and can Bitcoin reach true escape velocity with this kind of specter or sort of Damocles hanging over its head. Shoot. The other component is, there's sort of two market forces that transparently we contend with, being getting our hands on ASICs. No matter who the manufacturer is, there's a tension in how you get your hands on ASICs that are coming out of China. So we've already seen the dynamics at play with the tariffs that we've been dealing with for the last year and a half. We also know that there's difficulty around lead time. There's difficulty around chip wafer consistency as they come off of the TSMC presses. And what that's led to is there's a very robust secondary market, certainly in North America, but I think also globally. So I'm curious, as mining professionalizes, what the secondary market for ASICs looks like as it grows, and will there be enough strength in that secondary market and enough useful life in that secondary market to maybe be a hedge against the Chinese mainland concentration of hash rate.
So you got a new company named Great American Mining. That's a pretty strong statement. You got a position on this?
Yeah, no, I think for us, we think it's imperative to bring more hash rate to North American soil and American soil specifically. Obviously, I really like what Chrissy said about the short-term risk, the long-term risk. We are trying to distribute hash rate as quickly as possible. And me personally, I won't speak for GAM, but I'll speak for me. Like, it's impossible not to recognize that the chips are made in China, and they sort of dictate where the hardware comes from and how it flows. And so for me personally, the way I think about it and the way we're trying to pitch this at GAM is there's sort of an order of operations where you sort of concede that, yes, all right, the hardware is being developed in China, and they sort of have a stronghold on that part of the supply chain and the distribution of hash rate overall. But we could do the best that we can trying to distribute that hash rate geographically and bring those miners over here, plug them in, and make sure that hash power is being produced in a distributed fashion geographically. And then long term, that's why we're working with oil and gas companies particularly, is because number one, they have cheap energy that's scalable. They have a lot of cheap energy, which allows us to scale to a certain extent if we can execute on what we're doing. And then beyond that, they are a very big sort of force of nature within the global economy. Oil and gas is what makes the global economy go round, whether you like it or not. And so if they sort of have an aha moment with Bitcoin and realize how it can help them out, we believe long term they will fight monetarily with investments, capital investments, and sort of political investments to defend that sort of revenue stream that helps them out in a big way. So yeah, number one, like Christy said, short-term risk, long-term risk. Like it's definitely short-term risk in terms of all the hardware being produced there. But I think the order of operations is, hey, convince people, powerful players in other parts of the world that Bitcoin's worth investing in. It can help them out. And then they will move to invest and fight to protect that. And maybe that means helping to get chips manufactured outside of China and East Asia. It's definitely not a foregone conclusion, but that's just the way that makes sense to me personally and what we try to do at CAM.
When North American Foundry?
Well, I
after
have
talking
a
to
question
Mark
about that. Because there are North American foundries that are producing Bitcoin chips. And that does happen today. Bitmain has had some of its allocation produced in what you would consider a North American foundry. Canon's had some of their chips produced at Intel. So I'm curious whether is it actually a problem with the hardware itself and the chips being designed in China and produced in only the 3 fabs, or is it more an issue due to the fact that the mining hardware makers also compete against their customers? Is that the issue?
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely be an issue. And speaking of like building ASIC chips here in America, like you're competing with what Intel and AMD are creating themselves. But again, I'm not an expert at the chip fab level, so there's definitely people on this panel who can speak more to that than I can.
I could jump in on sort of my thoughts. I think the only way you could truly diversify hash rate outside of the sort of centralized geographies it's located in now is through price momentum, right? With the halving in 4 weeks and another one 4 years later, 210,000 blocks later, the only way for economics to stay consistent or increase, thus justifying additional hardware purchases and hash rate growth and diversification across the world, is through price appreciation. And if you look at, like, I always take this, like formulate my thoughts from a traditional financial services background, which is what I was doing before I got into this business about 3 years ago. And, looking at the supply demand, the buyers supporting the price today, the only way we're going to run to 30 or 40 or 100 or $200,000 a coin and increase that market cap from 160 billion to 1 or 2 or 3 trillion is to identify a new universe of buyers. And obviously, I think we're probably all disappointed with what happened in a month ago on March 13th with the sort of price crash. There's obviously some drivers behind that, and it's nice to see things recover. But in order for things to encourage new investment and encourage diversification and hash rate globally, you're going to need to see price momentum without question. And I think a large component of that is going to be driven by the financial services, the traditional sort of finance business, with ongoing adoption, ongoing application development, ongoing sort of security, custody, trading platforms, derivatives. So, I think being on the front lines as CEO of a public company, without question, selling a business to the institutional style investor, they would absolutely want to see more hash rate outside of China, and especially in mining operations and infrastructure play, wanting to be deploying capital in politically stable jurisdictions that they can jump on a flight and see where their money is being deployed with relative ease.
I guess I'd push there and say, like, in the we've had really productive conversations with institutional money, and been able to kind of go down the debt and the equity paths. The questions that have arisen for us were less around kind of what is the stability of the global marketplace and the industry that you're working in, and more focused on what is the future predictability of your cash flows, certainly on the debt side. So there's a lot of questions that we receive on what are your margins and how stable are they. So I guess that I would think about the security of the network the same way that I think about the way that we build the business. So when we look at an opportunity to build a site, we'll look at the CapEx dollars that have to get put onto that plot of land, and that means the construction, that means the electrical infrastructure, and it means the ASICs. The ASICs being always kind of over 50% of that spend. Then there's going to be the OpEx component. So I think that while the U.S. Or the North American hash and globally diversified hash is going to have variability in the CapEx, certainly around the ASIC procurement process, I do think that there's tremendous stability and tremendous competitive advantages that folks like Great American Mining and folks elsewhere, the hydro that we have in Canada and the U.S., the geothermal that's in Iceland, the oil that's sitting in Iran or Venezuela. There's nuance in the OpEx that folks are going to be able to compete with, that is going to create sort of unusual idiosyncratic outcomes. So having access to geothermal in 45-degree weather year round is a competitive advantage. It's really hard to unlock. So I think that when I think about the decentralization of hash, I view it along the avenue of the OpEx, which is the energy cost, but also along the CapEx, which is ASIC procurement, but energy infrastructure procurement as well.
Yeah, it comes down to simple sort of mining economics or first principles, right? We're sitting at relatively unprecedented levels right now at just over 12 cents rev per terahash. With the bump coming in 4 days of 11%, that rev per terahash is going to drop down to about 11 cents. So, obviously, power and the cost of that OpEx is first and foremost paramount. But without ongoing appreciation in BTC prices to maintain those economics, the margins are becoming so skinny that the return on an ASIC chip is exceeding 2 and 3 years, depending on how you're plugged in. And obviously the uncertainty around the halving and how long it takes for things to sort of recover and normalize and reach that equilibrium again is unknown. But without question, I think you just need ongoing institutional adoption. Traditional financial markets, there's a few smiles going on, but like to drive price and stabilize economics, and that's the position at the end of the day.
Agreed.
How much of mining is speculating?
I think if you sort of understand the principles of the protocol and this magical difficulty adjustment and how sort of elegant this by design was 11 years ago, you can safely, prudently deploy capital if you're buying chips for the right price and plugged into the right jurisdictions from an OpEx standpoint. Ignoring the ebbs and flows and the volatility that comes with price appreciation and the hardware suppliers trying to temporarily increase pricing and believing in the model and long-term sort of views underpinned by the principles of the protocol in terms of mining economics, you can build a real business here. It's as attractive as a business I've ever seen in terms of payback. I know I'm not supposed to say ROI, but payback on capital invested, and as long as you're buying right and you're good operators and you're plugged into the right jurisdictions.
Yeah, I would say mining is, profitable if the operator understands how to act in the industry and how not to get caught up in the hype. We see that, a lot of new players will come into space over a 3 or 4 month period when the price spikes, understanding that, this is not a industry you can jump in and out of very easily. It's something that you really have to invest in, something you have to spend, at least have like a 2, 3, 4 year outlook on, especially when it comes to deploying capital, deploying these sites. I think, as we've all realized, it comes down, and as we talked about earlier, it comes down to just the OpEx. It's how efficiently can you run the operation and how cheap can you get your power. At the end of the day, that's kind of all that really matters in Bitcoin mining, and people can forget that when the price of Bitcoin shoots up, simply because the calculators online, they show super great profitability, or they don't calculate the increase of difficulty or the delays that every miner faces when acquiring new hardware. So definitely, if you're viewing this game as a long-term investment, there's a lot of money to be made, especially in my eyes. Mining is the basic definition of work. We're just using energy, and at that, using at scale, there will always be a margin there, and it's just will keep getting squeezed over time. The larger operators will grow, and they'll vertically integrate, and in 10 years, I think the space will look very different from where it is today.
Okay, so I've got a question.
Sorry, wait, go for it.
Okay, so we've got some operators in here. There's people who have ran or are running sizable facilities. Chris, you put out a tweet a couple of days ago about people stop saying that you've got 1 cent per kilowatt hour all in power, right? So, guys, for those of you who are hosting equipment for other people, what's the approach that you take when it comes to pricing per kilowatt hour? How are you actually putting that out from a marketing standpoint? And what are you putting forward as some of the benefits of using or hosting with you as opposed to somebody else? Nobody? Come on. Come on.
No one wants to answer this.
Wow.
A loaded question.
It is. It's a conversation. Come on.
So I have a question. So slight tilt to that question, but Kevin, you're deploying miners on an energy production facility, like that would be closed if it wasn't mining. Like, do you count that as negative? Like, mining is creating a profit opportunity that didn't even exist before.
Right. So just to give a little color and background, we were a struggling peaking plant that was only ever coming online when the energy prices were spiking. And the ramp up it takes to actually capture those durations where pricing is good on the electrical grid, it wasn't efficient at all for us. But the moment we flipped the switch on for our behind the meter ongoing self mining operations, we became a permanently base loaded power plant. And as far as pinpointing what you want to sell for a hosting rate, I agree with Christy. Like, you can't really trust, like, the moment you hear something that's like 1 cent, 2 cent all in, it's not realistic at all. And if it really is that cheap, you have no incentives to even offer that to others. You might as well self mine on it. The real institutional players out there, they'll even know where you are, right? If it actually exists. So no one's going to go out there and even advertise that. So that's kind of like a red flag right away if you're ever looking for hosting out there.
Institutional players will have dedicated teams that actually go and do competitive intelligence on other people's sites and other people's power rates, and they will hire consultants or advisors that actually work at these energy and utility companies, and they go out to golf, and they make friends with these people so that they can get intelligence on contracts and intelligence on what their competitors currently have in their deals and in their contracts. And this isn't just something unique to Bitcoin as well. It happens in every industry. Networking is power in business.
You say, I want to host X amount of machines, and then all the colos bid on it. And suddenly you can get all the data across North America within a day. And you can just drill down into like all the details of their facilities.
Yep, and even better, you can with the RFP, you have to give it a code name, or some people will give it a code name. Even better if you give it the code name of one of your competitors. So I've seen one back in 2018 that had the code name of Genesis, and when I saw that, a bunch of people were messaging me, freaking out, going, "Oh my God, is that Genesis Mining? Currently looking for a site in the US." Fantastic.
I want to take even a step back. Who does hosting of the group who's here? We don't. We only self mine. We only build and capitalize our projects to self mine. So this is an industry I don't have a ton of insight into.
I've been in the hosting space for a while. That's how I started. Started self mining, and then as we began to expand facilities, got into hosting. But now, as time is coming, we're starting to get out of that industry and just going completely self mining. Because when you have a good site, it doesn't make sense to host really. It's all about maintaining the hash rate liquidity for your mining operation, and then managing the hash rate throughout the life cycle. And that's part of that life cycle is the ability to sell that hash rate when you believe it's overvalued in the market. It's really hard to sell that hash rate for hosting customers. Someone's hosting with you. In 2017 they could have been making a ton of money, and then right when 2018 hit, they could be bankrupt 6 months later. If you would have went to them as a hosting provider and said, "Hey, you should sell your stuff," they're going to be, "You're crazy. I'm making all this money. What are you talking about?" And I feel like that's kind of the game. How long are they playing it? Is it a long-term game, or is it a short-term game? How do they view the industry? So it's a business that we're in right now, but we're quickly getting out of it.
Yo, who's Mad Hatter? You got anything to say here? I actually am not familiar with who you are.
It's Gideon.
I'm Gideon.
Oh, what up, dude? Welcome. Well, I know you run some substations. What's happening down Texas? What do you have to add to this?
Minor centralization in China will not be a problem in the foreseeable future.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I'll take that bet.
We're dropping gigawatts in Texas, so it's happening.
That magical number again.
Yeah, it's happening. I'm not going to talk about it, but get out of the hosting business, and it's all about finding good locations. So,
well, no, that's one thing we've discovered at Great American Mining. Like, we don't even have to. So the way we approach it with the company that we're working with is we are solving a problem for the oil company that we're working with. They have a flare mitigation problem where their alternatives are not as profitable. They're becoming unprofitable actually, and so they have and talking about jurisdictional arbitrage, specifically with emissions laws that exist from state to state, country to country, whatever. Depending on where you are, some producers have a higher incentive than others to actually figure out this wasted gas problem. And so we think that we've honed in on a couple of producers that have a high incentive to solve this problem and are very motivated to do so. In Bitcoin mining, yes, we want to mine. I said Bitcoin like 3 times already. We want to mine to accumulate Satoshi's child as much as possible, but that's the beautiful thing about Satoshi's creation and the incentive system that he created.
Accumulating Satoshi's child just sounds weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is weird.
This is the best rule ever. This is staying permanently.
What was that?
What state or basin are y'all operating in?
We've talked about it. So we're in North Dakota. And North Dakota specifically has very strict emissions laws where they have drones driving over oil fields, and if they notice that they've flared an X amount over the course of a month, they'll tell them to shut down production. And so they're highly incentivized to not shut down production. And just without that incentive alone, all that gas is wasted, and you're just burning it. And they don't. And that's how up until last month, oil production has been so profitable. That they don't really care. A lot of oil producers don't really care about that wasted gas. They're making enough money producing and selling the oil that Yeah, yeah. Texas doesn't care at all.
We don't care.
But where
we think
yeah,
of flares
where we,
like waterfalls. I'd love to put turbines on them all, but it's just about economics.
yeah, no, and that's the funny thing. In the Bitcoin oil, gosh, it's the name of the group that Steve Barber runs. You find Texas oil producers who have excess gas and they're trying to sell people gas, and it's like, why would we buy the gas when we go to North Dakota and they'll give it to us just so we can take care of that problem for them? So there's weird fluctuating variable sort of incentives that exist from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and Bitcoin can really solve a problem in some of these jurisdictions. And that's the way we approach it. Like, hey, you have this flare mitigation problem, we're going to solve it with Bitcoin, and it just so happens to be much cheaper than your alternatives, which is usually natural gas liquid, or trying to build a pipeline to sell it to market. And we have more uptime, so we can consume more wasted gas than your alternatives that exist today.
Marty, can I ask you a tactical question that you may or may not have the answer to, or may or may not feel comfortable sharing? Because we dug under the hood on the flared gas, solution and model, and we kept bumping up against kind of the gen set problem, which was that, if we're paying, let's just say, a third of like what an MCF typically costs, we're gonna get hung out on the genset costs and the variability in the gas available at the wellhead at the beginning of the tapped well. You talked about this on the podcast. Everybody go download and subscribe to TFTC. Let's just say we get 10 megawatts worth of gas day one. That drops down to 2 over, let's just say, 6 months. You're going to have to way overpay for your gen set to capture that month one, gas. But then, you're going to get hung out on the OpEx in month 7 or month 8 because of the volumes tap down. Are you rolling that gen set into a second site? Is this about, being able to always roll it forward to the new tap?
Basically, yeah. So that's the idea. So when you poke a hole in the ground, you get oil out. The amount of waste gas that's being produced in the first 8 to 12 months is far exceeds what's produced in the rest of the life cycle of that well pad. But what we've come to find is that there's an incredible amount of well pads and an incredible amount of waste gas. And so what we really try to focus in on is the design of our containers, specifically around the portability of them, so that we can make quick moves when need be. Depending on, again, it's all depending on the jurisdiction and the particular situation of the oil producer you're working with. In some cases, we're finding out have a high incentive to make sure that you can move as quickly as possible, and we'll even like try to help you.
Yeah, it's awesome because that piece, we certainly don't have any of those relationships that you guys have built, with the O&G operators, and that to me is like the key to marrying our industry to their industry. It's awesome. I was fired up hearing that podcast.
No, and that's been our approach with them is, hey, we know you have this problem. We really like Bitcoin. We think Bitcoin solves your problem. We're going to be as transparent as possible because we help you, you help us. And it's worked pretty well up to this point. Who knows? Like it's still very early on in what we're doing. So,
Marty, I hope you're ready to finish that bottle.
Yeah. Bitcoin fixes this?
Fixes that bottle.
Can you divulge whether this is like a straight up, fuel for purchase, having the producer avoid the transmission costs, or is this on a sort of profit share basis with your ONG partners?
Honestly, it's something we're still working out. Like, we've got a relationship with them. We're like, hey, you need to solve this problem. We think we can solve it. Let's work together. And this is raw for everybody. So it's like, hey.
Yeah. It's a question that, I get a ton is like, should I buy it before having, after having? How do you determine when actually to purchase if you're sitting on a bunch of, capital waiting for that? Like, Wes, how do you guys think about like deploying capital? like when do you pull the trigger on new machines, and like how do you predict that the machine prices, like, you know, moving forward?
Yeah, it's really about ignoring the market cycles. I mean, obviously, 2019 was a pretty crazy year, seeing BTC run from, you know, May low or March lows to almost 14K in July. You know, you had some, I think Q1 19 average mining economics were around 14 cents rev per terahash, and we saw periods or days during Q1 and or Q2 2019 of like 45 cents. So if you're buying hardware at 30 bucks a terahash and you're making 45 cents a day per terahash, your payback period is pretty quick, right? So, you know, we always took the approach like, you know, hash rates will react to outsized mining economics and periods of sort of increased and heightened profitability, and tried to ignore those market cycles as best possible. And, you know, had an incredible year in 2019. We grew the business by almost 300%. We added a new facility and about 600 petahash of self mining sort of BTC ASICs, and you know, we deployed the capital really well. We ignored the heightened volatility and the hype of May and June and July of 2019, and managed to secure hardware at some pretty attractive prices. And we did it through three separate manufacturers. All of them had their pros and cons. You know, the dealing with the ASIC manufacturers and sort of always seem to be overpromising and under-delivering in terms of timelines and sort of ultimate even specs of the new generation hardware. But you know, we generally maintain the practice of trying to recover our capital investment on the hardware side in 200 to 250 days, and then making sure any capital deployed in the infrastructure was spent very well, like in a vertically integrated business, trying to sort of beat the market in terms of our build out costs.
Anyone else? I know Steve is buying S9s right now. Anyone else buying S9s?
If I had 1.5 or 2.5 cent or 2 cent power in North Dakota with an ONG and genset, I'd be buying S9s from. Sorry, John Paul, you're running mining store. I'd be buying. You'd be selling them to me for like $30 or $35 for an S9, I'm sure, right? So I'd be buying. I'd be gobbling those up with that sort of OpEx. But you know, unfortunately, those opportunities are few and far between if you don't have significant dollars to build out the power infrastructure.
Yeah, we're
running some numbers on that today. It's like S9s, even at even half a penny for power, you're going to spend $90 to $100 to build out that infrastructure, conservatively, and they cost $30 to $45 to purchase. But at the end of the day, you know, if there's any intermittency in the power, you're going to lose a lot of S9s just from that. So there's only a couple power sources out there that can give steady power at 2 cents. And those metrics are even harder to run with. You know, I think it was like an 8% IRR or something with like 2.5 cent power. So it's not very attractive. Just the capital for building out the site, if you don't already have the site built, it's going to be hard to make better sense to go with S17s or newer machines.
I'm watching the S9 market and have dry powder to deploy. I'm not going to buy them at $40, but we can talk at 20.
Pre or post halving?
I don't care.
There are folks buying them as well to cannibalize them for parts as well. The controller boards in the S9 as well as the casing are used in, how do I say this without having to drink? They're used in alternate markets. There we go. So I recently helped a buyer acquire 15,000 of them because he wanted to use the parts for a new ASIC he was building. not related to not related
Or which
to
shitcoin? Which shitcoin? I want to know. Which shitcoin's getting an ASIC? Are we allowed to talk about that?
You can talk about the shitcoin, you just can't shill it.
Okay.
I just can't shill it. What defines shilling though?
Recommending or saying this is great.
Just give
we
a
can't
give
talk
a warning.
about
It's allowed
can't
to
talk
be
about how
a
good Decred is.
Oh God.
You guys aren't running your D3s?
So in the S9 use parts, there's two projects. One is that both MicroBT as well as a subsidiary within InnoSilicon. So most people are familiar with InnoSilicon as a Bitcoin hardware producer. I'm doing this just so I have an excuse to keep drinking the vodka. But
you don't need an excuse.
This is true. Well, it helps me feel better about myself. Okay. So also produces a lot of other projects, and they also have a thriving business outside of cryptocurrency. There are hashboard replacements that fit into the S9 shell, and these can upgrade your S9 through a 1600 watt power supply, anywhere from 17 terahash to some of the chips are doing 26 terahash. It was limited quantity. There was only about, I think they only produced 25,000 boards, but a few public companies got their hands on them, public mining companies. And then there's also script ASICs that are coming out, and they are using the same form factor. And then in the FPGA market as well for cryptocurrency mining, people are also cannibalizing S9 shells as the perfect form factor. And they're reusing the PSU, the controller board, the casing, the fans. So it's a pretty good deal if you can pick them up for 40 to 50 bucks, because right now in the fan markets and in the aftermarkets in China, it can, some of my vendors are selling them for $7 to $8 per fan. So it kind of works out if you can get them fully landed in the US and you want to build out these ASICs in the US.
Especially right now, with anything coming out of China, you're looking at $15 a kilogram shipping and massive lead times, ordering a plane and whatnot.
What happened, Christy? What happens with the hash boards now?
It's worse than scrap metal. So if you can, you have to pay to recycle them, and the value you're going to get from the hash board is horrible. I've seen some really creative projects where people, are trying to heat their homes with some of them. Some folks are throwing them in immersion tanks in outside of the US in places where 1 to 2 cent power can exist if you're friendly with the right folks there and you don't mind your equipment getting up and walking away one day. But mostly it's just garbage. So the hash boards are kind of useless. So nothing to do with them.
You guys, I want to transition into having predictions, but before that, I just have a question from just a Bitcoin pleb mindset. Let's say I'm a pleb. I want to get no KYC coins. I don't care what my electricity cost is. I'm probably getting like 20 cent a kilowatt hour in SF. Is it worth it to just buy like 3 or 4 S9s and like put them in my garage or something like that and just stack some KYC free coin?
Nope.
Hell
It's a
yeah.
trace. Team up with
Nope.
the mining farm.
Negative.
Right direction.
Yeah.
Just
No.
just no way
So
across the
BBS.
board. Not even worth it to get KYC free coins. No.
No.
Mine
Alright.
shit coins. Mine shit coins and flip them for Bitcoin.
All
Unless
right.
you know how to-
That's actually what I'm doing.
Unless you know how to
But-
steal power from your neighbor, no, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Hey,
If
for
you wanna
hosting
get-
Monero.
If you
All
want to
right.
get no KYC
Leave it to the
coins-
professionals. I got it. Wait.
You should get-
Yeah. Wait. Sorry. Go for it.
If you want to
Alejandro.
get no KYC coins, you should contact mining farms or a pool operator. They can probably sell you them for they'll have a little bit. It'll be a bit more expensive, but they'll sell it to you.
Don't do it.
10% premium. Yeah.
Mind your own. Don't trust anyone.
Well, that's also
Gideon says buy the S9s. All right. All right.
Good.
So anyone have a bold halving prediction?
It'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
It's gonna happen.
Quantitative tightening,
Just like the
baby.
last two.
Hash rate's gonna decrease for sure. I mean, that's for sure. But all these S9s, they're not going to find new homes. They're going to find the garbage can instead. Those are going to turn off. There's people guess how many what the hash rate is that the S9s currently have in the market or in the total hash rate. Some say 30%. Well, if those are no longer profitable to mine, then that means a 30% decline. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
Any specific percentages people are willing to throw out? How much hash rate will decline?
13%.
And we'll all hold you to it. We'll quote you on it.
13%.
13%? That's pretty low, no?
30.
I think 30.
I'm gonna, if we're in the same price environment we are today, I'm gonna say like 50 to 60%.
Wow.
How many difficulty adjustments do we have?
Wow.
Do we only have one or two between now and the halving?
Two.
Two. And the next one's like projected to be like 11 to 12%.
11%, yeah.
11.
Yeah.
Blocks are coming real fast.
Anybody with
Like
less
9
on
minutes.
like 50% plus, given all current market conditions?
No, I'm
Do
in
you get-
20 to 40.
So we have a 50% potential hash rate decrease. That's pretty fucking bold. Anyone
can't
think that
happen.
hash rate is gonna or anyone think that blocks are going to continue coming fast after the adjustment?
What?
Say that again?
Yeah.
Does anyone think that after this next adjustment that hash rate or that blocks are going to continue coming fast?
No.
10%, 10-minute average or what?
So
Yeah.
a second up epoch is what you mean,
Oh.
right?
Yeah.
Sure. Like adjustment happens, they're still coming faster than 10 minutes.
No, not likely at all.
stupid
Unless there's major
No.
price momentum, it's not likely at all.
Yeah.
No.
All right. I just asked because I'm planning a halving live stream, and it really helps to know. So I appreciate the help.
I feel like I should qualify my 50 to 60%. The fact is, with this 10% or 11% bump in 4 hours, we're heading down, or less than that, 3 hours, 2 hours, we're heading down to 11 cents. Sorry, 4 days. We're heading down to 11 cents rev per terahash. That doesn't factor in, your OPEX, like your staff costs, your downtime, your PUE. So like round that down to 5 cents rev per terahash post halving at the same price point, and ask yourself how many miners can stay profitable at that point. If you're running the best generation equipment on the market, which would be the S19, that they're 29.5 terahash or joules, if it actually hits those specs, you're using about 720 watts a day per terahash. At 4 cents, you're spending 3 cents to produce a terahash, not factoring in your PUE, downtime, etc. So I just think the vast majority of miners will be unprofitable without price momentum. So in this, all things static, have the block reward, there's going to be a significant adjustment. Do I think it's going to be 50%? Likely not, but it's going to be some combination of some price momentum and a significant drop, something like 40%. But it will take a few adjustments to play out, because the fact is that the actual first difficulty adjustment is 1,008 blocks after the halving event. So you don't have a full period to factor in the true drop and the true difficulty adjustment post halving. So I think May is going to suck for all miners. The hobbyists are going to get crushed. The industrial guys will have a hard time. Most of the new generation equipment will be unplugged or underclocked in a very, very significant way. And by hopefully mid-June, things stabilize back to where we're sitting today in terms of rev per terahash.
It's only
It will
going to
be
be
quick.
bad in terms of dollars, but
Yeah.
if you're low cost, it's a field day, man.
Well,
That's true.
the fact is, you're not going to see 144 blocks a day either, right? Because it's
Right.
a compounding effect. If the block time goes to 13 or 14 minutes on average, you're going to have less blocks per day in terms of reward, and half the revenue in the form of a 6.25 block reward. So there's going to be a a period of pretty poor economics in May and early June while this plays out. But the fact is, you have all these technical analysts trying to make predictions based on the July 16 halving and 4 years prior to that. And the fact is, it's really irrelevant in my opinion. I mean, I think the July 16 halving, there was a 1.5 exahash of computing power in the network, and we're now sitting at 120 exahash, something like that. So
correct.
There's just no comparison. This is really like industrial scale institutionalized business at this point, 2 years after this magical 2017 price momentum. And time will tell, but at the end of the day, your revenue has to justify your input costs. It's as simple as that. It comes down to economics 101. And one of two things has to happen. There has to be a significant drop in hash rate, or BTC has to run in a significant way, or some combination of the two.
Or we could have the government step in and bail us out.
Yeah, no kidding.
On your point on profitability, like what percentage of the like mining network do you think doesn't care if they go below zero? Like you got to assume that some percentage in Venezuela or potentially China is just they don't care if they go -5%, -10%. What percentage do you guys think actually like are fine to go below zero on a perpetual basis?
I guess you'd have to ask yourself in China, what are you prepared to pay to skirt currency controls in terms of a transaction fee?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there will be groups that mine at a loss, but there won't be many of them.
Yeah, you gotta have the balance sheet to do that too.
Of course, yep. Every day you see your payout, you know exactly what you spent that day in power, and if the two don't add up, the adjustment comes pretty quickly. If you're on top of your operations.
So I guess this is kind of why I asked earlier, like how much of mining is speculative? Like how much are there like, legitimate hash power behind someone who's like, fuck it, I'm just going to stack right now. Like how much hash power is acting in that way?
I think right now a lot of S9 miners are acting that way. But having maybe 5 to 10%, like people have been saying, it's hard to run an operation when your biggest bill is your OpEx bill, and if you're 10% just on power, you have staffing above that, you have other costs, you have overhead, so you're really 20%, potentially even higher.
Yeah, it's definitely more than it should be. I mean, miners are already taking a long-term view on Bitcoin by investing in machines. Your revenue is tied to the price of Bitcoin, and then your machines are tied to the price of Bitcoin too. So you already have that balance sheet risk. If you like hold all your cash in Bitcoin too, you're going like triple leveraged on Bitcoin, which, we're all believers in Bitcoin here, else we wouldn't be on the call. But like, that's a big leverage position to take. And if you want your business to be around in 3 years, like I wouldn't leverage up 3 times.
No one does that. So no one does that.
Right. So I think I would differentiate by, or be more specific in saying that the hash rate producers, the people actually running operations, they focus more on the cash flow side. They don't want to do that triple leveraging, right? It's actually the people that are purchasing hash rate or the exchanges that are your market making with your liquidity. Those are the people that are taking that third layer of leverage.
But you guys wouldn't say that a lot of miners hold Bitcoin?
Not institutional ones. It's very hard to see institutional operations holding majority of their coins. I would imagine they would be liquidating on a consistent basis.
I agree with that. Like public companies for sure, and some of the more institutional ones. But I still talk to a lot of miners that hold a lot of Bitcoin on their.
No. A lot of big mining farms hold Bitcoin for sure. Maybe not the institutional, maybe not the public ones, but I know of many big mining farms across the globe who hold Bitcoin, and a lot of it. So
there was a blitz in the public markets for back in 17 and early 18 for groups that set out to build public companies to inventory all their production and offer investors a public vehicle to get exposure to the underlying digital currency. And the fact is that might have worked for several months, but as there's been this sort of unprecedented compression in economics, and those groups are still plugged in or running older generation hardware with significant margin compression, they've been forced to liquidate. And you know, we take a very different stance at Bitfarms in that, you know, we didn't want to be viewed as an asset manager. We wanted to be an infrastructure play, much like a senior gold producer. So if you want leverage torque to the underlying commodity, you know, buy the infrastructure company. If you want to go long BTC, there's lots of ways to do that.
Yeah, and you still get that exposure to Bitcoin. I mean, if Bitcoin goes to 100K, I got to drink a few times here, but if it goes to 100K, I mean, you're still benefiting from that. You don't have to take it on your balance sheet.
Exactly.
But you should.
That's my big question. Like, at what point does the paradigm truly shift? And you have a lot of energy producers and people outside of Bitcoin wanting to hold Bitcoin over dollars or other currencies. And how do you make that flip? And this is something just personally I'm infinitely fascinated by. Like, if Bitcoin does fulfill the use case a lot of Bitcoiners think it will, when does that paradigm shift happen? Does it happen in our lifetimes, a couple decades from now?
There's literally no time like the present.
Yeah.
Every country running their printing presses.
Yeah, I think right now with everything that's going on, the current economic situation, people who are between 15 and 25 more than ever are buying into Bitcoin's use case. So I think that we're 10 to 15 years from seeing a real mindset shift. You know, there's still too much money in the hands of too many people who have too much power to press against it. But it's very similar in my mind to how the legalization of cannabis happened, right? So if you think about it, Normal and all of those, those movements started.
That took 100 years, though.
It didn't really take 100 years. It took 30 years, right? Because when I was in high school and college, that was all anyone talked about. Legalize it, legalize it, legalize it. As soon as people my age were able to take power, right, start getting elected, become business leaders, that's when it happened. And that's what it takes. It starts with the youth, and then when they age and once they start taking power, the adoption can occur. And I think that that's where we're at right now. This current situation, everyone is feeling it, right? We're all like quarantined at home with our parents. Kids are seeing their parents who are not doing well financially. They're taking more from this time than anything else. So having the ability to really like let this sink in with them, they're going to come out of this. A lot of them are going to come out of this with a desire to figure out how to not be in this situation ever again. So I think that will lead to something big.
But there's still a lot of challenges that we face if we want to get mainstream adoption of crypto or with Bitcoin. Sorry, there's scalability issues. There's privacy issues. A lot of people call one coin tainted, the other not. Then there's a premium on the coin that's not tainted. There's fungibility issues.
Wait, but do they?
But
is that a thing? Yeah. Are
That is
there
a
really?
thing. That is a thing. That's
Gideon
definitely.
talked about this.
Seen that.
But the problem is the scalability. I mean, we can't get anywhere without having the right scalability options for Bitcoin. I mean, it's the truth.
Adding to what Whit said about the people starting to look at Bitcoin that are in that 20 to 28 age group, over the past just 3 days, I've had at least 4 of my friends call me up saying, "Hey, I want to spend my stimulus check on Bitcoin. Like, I can't figure it out." Like, I'm like, download Cash App, download Coinbase. Like, well, it says I want to buy over $1,000. I need to verify. So there's still onboarding issues. And I was talking to my uncle again today. He's like, "Oh, Gemini.com. I don't know. That site seems, crazy. It's like, I checked some of the reviews. It's not very trustworthy." I'm like, well, buy GBTC then. Like, buy on your normal stocks. So it's still a lot of onboarding that needs to occur. And I think usability is still not there. Even for us, we're like, oh, it's super easy. You just go on and buy with the exchange. We're already verified. So there's a lot of improvement. But it's starting to turn. This is the first time we're having people call me up saying, hey, I have US dollars. The government's printing a lot of money. I'm understanding that this money is becoming worth less, and I want to do something about it. And I haven't seen that in the past 10 years I've been preaching Bitcoin.
Now, to add to that, with that being said, I think it's undeniable that the usability, the accessibility has only gotten better over time, and we are beholden to our own experiences in this. It may seem slow for us, but if you take a 30,000 foot view and look down, it's only been 11 years. It's been pretty remarkable progress that the Bitcoin network and infrastructure has made in a little over a decade, and that sort of gets gasoline poured onto it when you consider that we were born in this weird inflection point of the digital age and the information age. Like, things are only the pace of change is only going to increase from here. So like our monkey brains literally can't even comprehend how fast this can change. And that's what, as a podcaster, somebody talks a lot to developers building out the protocol. That's one thing that gives me a bit of confidence in the long-term viability of Bitcoin. As you talk to the people actually working at the protocol level, they're like, hey, I actually think the price is pacing well with the pace of protocol development, and they're pretty confident that things like Schnorr, Taproot, and the Lightning Network and build out can, within the next, I don't know, I could put a timeline on it, but I think it
Another 18
can
months,
be
man.
a viable solution. Another TM trademark, 18 months.
Well, it's all on market cap, right? Like, the bigger that this gets, the more people who are in college are going to be looking to come out and build on Bitcoin, right? There's going to be more people with a desire to. What's that? Sorry, Gideon.
Skip college and build on Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we've got a lot of smart people in the
That's
community.
the decision you can make.
Yeah. I mean, shit. There's no cheaper education than getting involved in Bitcoin now and figuring it out. If you're 18, that's going to be far less expensive than college.
Dude, there's some
not
awesome
financial
Bitcoin
advice.
plebs. There's some Bitcoin plebs up there that are like, wow, you are like 14, you're like 16. Damn.
I have faith in the Zoomers.
Dude, I wish I woke up when I was 14.
Scalability seems like kind of a pointless discussion. I mean, we've seen pretty impressive scaling. I mean, breaking the mental model of Bitcoin doesn't, I mean, this is a big thing for me. It was like, look, Bitcoin doesn't compete with the Visas and the MasterCards. This thing competes with centralized banks. And like, I didn't have a lot of friends that wanted to talk about that. And like, now that's become it's becoming a more mainstream. And once that mental model shifts, I mean, Bitcoin's there and the innovation is going to happen. But I mean, I've talked to kids in high school. Look, for me, Napster was like really cool. Those kids grew up in it. I mean, all my kids, it's going to happen fast. But we got to get the user interface and, how to onboard people to where it's easier. So if anyone's got any good ideas, let us know.
How long until central banks have those wallets for you? Do you think do you ever think we're gonna see orange coin wallets with your central banks?
No, I don't think they're smart enough to pull that off. The fucking banking system is built on COBOL. They're not gonna be able to develop the talent to build that.
I'd argue it's built on opportunity. I don't know. I think if they see the ability to profit, I don't know. We could see it.
I mean, that's what Libra did. Libra tried. I mean, seriously, has anyone heard of Libra in the last few months? We all forgot about it.
And they just released today, actually.
Yeah,
but I'm not saying their own. I'm not saying their own currency. I'm saying them jumping on the Bitcoin hype train, right? Like,
it will be inevitable. Bitcoin's doing what Ripple was supposed to do. Like,
No.
it's actually crazy. Like, that's what permissionless tech does.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the opportunity cost arises. Like, all right, I can either hold. It becomes like a social thing too. You make fun of people, hold their UTXOs in a fucking central bank wallet. You're like, what the hell are you doing, idiot? You could download Electrum and hold them there. Like, why would you do that?
Except not Electrum.
I mean, possibly. Like, Electrum's okay if you're running the server.
Yeah, but it's up to all of us. We just got to red pill more people. So when you're at your doctor, when you're at the gas station, just ask them. You guys take Bitcoin? I mean, every day, get that scaling in there.
I've been doing it for 7 years, man.
Tax sets.
DAC and
But
Sats.
that's a good point, because I think to bring it kind of back to the economics of mining, like we, certainly our operations, we kind of have two tracks. One of them is we got a bunch of US dollar liabilities in our power bill, insurance policy, whatever. And then we've got a whole, revenue side and asset side of the ledger, which is basically Bitcoin denominated. Like, to me, an ASIC is borderline Bitcoin denominated, because it's got a future cash flow in Bitcoin terms. And then obviously there's the block rewards that are coming in Bitcoin. So I think, having
everyone just needs to take a big sip because of all the BTC that's being uttered right now.
Oh, yeah.
Drink. I think I heard it like 15 times.
I'm empty, so.
So there's sort of
anyone got
like
any cool stories about outside of America, outside of China mining, like any of the smaller, because like some of the countries where you can get, does anyone operate any of those regions or know anybody?
Today I spoke to somebody who's seems pretty well educated about a pretty sizable farm in Kazakhstan, like in the middle of Kazakhstan. So
all the stans, you got Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Iran's been doing it, but they had some policy that was pretty unfavorable last year. So
isn't Belarus in the game as well?
But you also have established countries like Norway still mining quite heavily. I think they had some favorable subsidies come into place a few months ago.
No, they're commies. You want to stay out of there.
Christy, can you introduce us to your friend there?
Which one?
The one sitting on your shoulder.
Yes, this
Ah.
is Midnight. She has two sisters, Blue and Wish, and she's named after the hash function BMW, Blue Midnight Wish. All of my birds are named after hash functions. And she is 5 weeks old, and she is very clingy.
Christy, fun fact, my first pet ever was a bird, and his name was Midnight as well.
Aww.
Yeah.
You have a dog?
Wow.
You said all of my birds, Christy. How many birds do you have right now?
I'm a little too many. I have 6 currently, and we just got 2 more last night. So
is that 8 or is that 6?
I have 8 now in total. 6 at home and 2 more on the way.
And they're all coin hash functions. I think that's 8 drinks there.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
6
Very
birds.
nice.
Whoever said the D word also has to have some alcohol.
One of the next topics we had was like around the financialization of hash rate. I know a few of you touched on it earlier on the inability to like lock in your revenue. Definitely prevents some capital from coming into the space. Kevin, I know you're probably the best place to talk about this, given you just executed a really cool contract. How are you guys looking at hedging? Like, is that something that you're wanting to do? Is it something that isn't available yet, or like how do you think about that?
Well, I think just we've proven that it is available. Now it's just a matter of what scale and is it sustainable, and will there always be this volume? Like we were only able to execute up to 30% of the hash rate that we own. If there's a possibility to lock it in for 100%, then we have essentially the perfect business model, right? We can lock in our input costs by putting futures on natural gas. Then our output is just on selling our hash rate. But I think that still remains to be seen, is what is the appetite of the marketplace for procuring this much hash rate? Because just because we're selling it doesn't mean someone else can't down the road as well.
Yeah. So what do you think is like holding the market back from developing on the position that will, take I guess a long position on the value of hash rate and be the other side of the contract to miners trying to hedge?
Well, I think it's anytime you're getting institutions involved, because that's the type of players that would have that type of volume and appetite. There's all the regulatory frameworks they have to get comfortable with. There's also the counterparty risk. It's perfect for us to lock in both inputs and outputs, but what's to say that we just don't take the cash that we get up front and just run away with it, right? There's the counterparty risk of whether we do it intentionally or not. Like, how do we stay in business? How is the providers of the hash rate reliable enough that if they do secure a contract that's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years long, especially when you have a halving approaching in less than a month, how do you know that hash rate will still be up and running?
Yeah, the problem is the bid ask is very wide right now, and there's no term. So assuming that buyer is willing to continue to buy contracts on a regular basis on a short-term nature, for sure, it could be a great model for miners looking to capitalize their expansion. But it's you're one of the first groups to do it, and I don't know if you've disclosed who facilitated the trade. I know who it is, but I'm not going to obviously call it out. But yeah, I think it's great for the business, and this is the next step in mining, the ability for miners to sort of lock in those returns.
Come on, tell us who it was.
Oh, there's PR. It was Bitluda.
Yeah, I like those.
Bitluda helped broker it, right? But I
Bitluda
guess
helped broker it, correct? Yeah. But
the other side would be like a hedge fund or a high net worth individual who wants exposure to hash rate or wants to make a bet on hash rate.
But yeah, to Wes's point, the bid ask has to be very desirable too. And truthfully speaking, it's like if you want to sell volume, you have to take a haircut.
Yeah, that's always been I've thought through this personally, just trying to write about it for the newsletter and think about it for the podcast. Like, what are the situations in which you would hedge hash rate? And like the only situation I can think of in the long run is a hedge against capital investment in miners that you haven't plugged in yet. Like if you get a new batch of ASICs that that haven't hit the market yet, and nobody knows if you're going to plug them in and they're going to be bunk or not. Like that is one of the only situations I can think of. And then we factor in the lag time of the supply chain, and it gets weird after that. And I think Leo Zhang from Iterative Capital has some good thoughts on this too. I've talked to him a lot about this. Like it gets complicated when you try to do the hash rate derivatives, and obviously there's people like Jeremy Rubin and others working on creating these products on chain, but whether or not the demand will be there once they're produced is still up in the air, in my opinion. And again, I'm not an expert in this, just rationally thinking through it. Like the only hedge I can think of is a hedge in capital investment in the actual boxes that you don't know if they work or not.
Yeah. Those difficulty hedges though, they usually don't make sense for a miner to hedge their risk. Like let's look at what's going to happen on the halving, right? Like difficulty is going to drop. So how can you hedge your mining revenue with a difficulty hedge?
Not only that, chip foundries have also a pretty strong. They're the ones who are in control of creating the chips for these for the mining rigs. So they have a very good position in terms of knowing when the difficulty may spike, I see a very hard path for difficulty types of financial instruments because of chip foundries.
Yeah, I talked to Whit about this on his podcast, but I feel like all those like Bitmain, WhatsMiner, like they're all trying to go public.
Those are not chip foundries. You need to keep that in mind. The chip foundries are not Bitmain, or the chip foundries is TSMC and Samsung, and those are the big boys, and those are the guys who are actually in control of Bitmain and of what MicroBT.
Right.
Yeah,
they're in control.
And ironically, they aren't located in China either.
They're not.
TSMC is Taiwanese.
Taiwan and Korea.
Right. Yeah. Do you think TMC or Intel is going to place like a levered bet on a derivatives exchange on the value of hash rate? Like they can't do that and then
Bitcoin.
They might, and there's just the possibility that they might is enough for some people to be very hesitant about it.
But there's too many variabilities. Like even if you do get the hardware, you have fucking like weather variabilities. Like you could have, like we saw in China where some operations got flooded out, or you have fire risk and stuff like that. You can't factor that in without like and you'd have to buy insurance on that hedge as well. You're just compounding the risk at that point.
Yeah, it's a lot of macro factors that you have to take a bet on. But the idea is that if you can properly hedge that, then you can just, you can operate in a more efficient way over the long term. So if you take like a short position on the value of hash rate, you know that some value of hash rate is going to be locked in based on that bet. Pair hash rate now. If you took a 6-month bet, obviously it's going to be lower than that. But I guess the question is like, how much lower? Is it going to be 9 cents? Is it going to be 8 cents?
But the 6,000 pound gorilla in the room is Bitcoin price. So what I think that is interesting is like hash rate is all well and good, but like at the end of the day, we've got USD denominated expenses that are going to hit every single month. I know maybe I'm ready to get paid in nothing but Bitcoin, but I can say not everybody on our team with a mortgage is willing to do that yet. So there's significant dollar expenses that are associated with operating a mine. And so if you're able to hedge your dollar margins as it relates to your operations, then there's significant value. And I'd be willing to take a haircut of some level on Bitcoin price volatility to cover some percentage of the revenues that my operation can produce, because I know that I've got a tranche of OpEx involved that is going to get paid whether Bitcoin's $100,000 or $5,000.
Hey, let's go to Kevin. You're about to bounce. Let's give you a last word here.
Sure. I'll piggyback off of what Harry just said. I think a really nice transition that we've seen is a lot of people have tried to lock in their fixed income previously using hosting, right? That was their fixed income where they could lock in their US dollar income. Now they're looking more towards hash rate derivatives and hash rate contracts. But hey, I really appreciate you guys having me on. This was a lot of fun. Hey, cheers, guys.
Coming, man.
Cheers, bud.
Cheers, Kevin.
Here, guys.
Who wants to pick up?
DK, should we go through these bullish and bearish?
Anything else here? No other trends? Okay, sure. Yeah, why not? I don't have them. Do you have them in front of you, Ethan?
Yeah. Okay, so let's just go through bullish or bearish. Everyone can speak on them. So the first one is cloud mining.
Bearish.
Fair.
I've heard rumors cloud mining is coming back. It's never worked in the past. I don't know why this time would be different.
Security.
Okay, how much hash rate do you think will be on BitDeer by next year?
BitDeer?
Yeah.
That's like Bitmain's thing, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just starting.
The question is, how is it going to get killed, right? Like, are pools? I mean, obviously, BitDeer is a different story, right? Because Bitmain will always support its own project, but will service providers completely walk away from anyone that's offering cloud mining and just kill it, or are companies and manufacturers and service providers going to continue to take money from something that everyone says they're bearish on, or are people actually going to act on that and dead the fucking thing?
The Ponzi will continue. Too many idiots.
Alejandro, you're operating a pool. What's up?
What's the question?
Would you
cloud mining?
Would you be willing to deny service to a cloud mining operator?
Does that go with the ethos of Bitcoin to deny services to anyone?
That's a political answer. I like.
There you go. Okay, fair way to say no comment. I got you.
I mean,
How could
Ali
you even
had
do
your
that if
fair.
you wanted to?
That's fair.
That's true.
But
I mean, why do we have to choose? I think we should not choose.
But operating ethically, I don't think there's anything wrong with operating ethically. Like taking an ethical stance from a business point of view that's not necessarily denying service, right? Like for me to say that I'm not going to provide service to someone because of beliefs that I hold true, that's my freedom, right? Like I'm able to do that. Now, if someone else is going to provide them the service, I don't have to shame them for doing it. But I think that until there's a little bit more of an ethical approach to how the business is done, I mean, cloud mining is a scam. Like it's not beneficial to anyone other than the person selling the contract, right? Like,
look, at the end of the day, the pools, most including us and Poolin and back in the day with BTCL.com, most of the time we don't know who's mining. We see 12345 at 12345.com.
Fair.
With 300 petty hashes coming in, and that's it. That's all we see.
Yeah, that was my question. How would you even be able to tell?
Yeah, I mean, the only way we could tell is if they contact us, right? And then they tell us, look, we have this thing. But most let's say a cloud mining company that is doing some, let's say, funky business might not contact us. So we don't know.
It'd be impossible to tell with like the open cloud miners, but like a company like BitDeer, they only have a few pools that they list on their site, which is antpool, BTC.com.
Yeah.
And F2 pool. That's
completely
it.
insulated.
You can't even mine on mine or Alejandro's pool with them. So
No,
we can block it that way.
We won't accept any BitDeer in our stuff.
So that's the
Most
line.
definitely not.
No Bitmain.
Yeah, they sued us. They sued us.
Did they?
Yeah,
sued
for
everyone.
$40 million.
For doing what?
Wow.
Because we're all co-founders of BTC.com, and they what is it? Non-compete. We broke our non-compete clause, so they sued us in China. $40 million. We actually, it's still in trial, so there's nothing more I could say. But yeah.
What's
So,
trial in China like, man?
Look,
what happens?
What I do know is that most of the like all the guys that, including Poolin and MicroBT, we all came out of Bitmain, and we're doing better than Bitmain, and that really upsets Bitmain. And they're just trying to stop us, right? We came out a year ago, Poolin, mining Bitcoin, and we're already number one every so F2 pool sometimes takes number one day, but we're the top mining pool. So for them, it is only it's a tactic to slow us down, and regardless of what happens with the legal case, we built BTC.com, so they know what we can do, so they're scared of us. So that's why that's basically the only reason they put the whole thing in the court. I mean, we might lose, and we might have to pay not $40 million, but just maybe like what. Or we might win and we don't have to pay anything. But it's just to stop us. It's just a tactic to stop us, to slow us down. Basically, that's it.
Same thing with block withhold you? Do they try and like block withholding attacks or DDoS?
No, they're not. No, they're not. No, I don't think they're doing that. I mean, but if they were, we wouldn't be able to find out if it was them, right?
It's the Icarus story of early Bitcoin. I flew too close to the sun.
Yeah, well, MicroBT has the same issue. I mean, they come from Bitmain, and they also got sued.
Yeah.
So it's same story basically, but we're the pool side. Thanks.
We're getting the real dirt here at 4 a.m. your time in the morning. Either you're tired or a couple of beers.
You got to keep him drinking here.
Both. No. I'm actually leaving right now. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, if you're leaving, you want to do last words?
No, I'm not leaving. Just I'll stay.
Okay. So wait, what's next? We have non-Chinese ASICs. Bullish or bearish?
Bullish.
Yeah, bullish.
Where
exactly?
If not from China, where?
Cannot comment.
Okay.
It's not only the chips that you need to also have the whole entire manufacturing side of things. That's what China excels in, the whole manufacturing side. Nowhere in Europe, I'm based in Germany. Nowhere in Europe. I mean, maybe Germany has a very strong manufacturing, but it's not nowhere near to what it's not the heavy industry that China has. So it's very difficult to create these miners here. These mining.
Does that change post-COVID?
No.
Quit. No, I have no comment on that. Christy's the one shaking her head yes. She should definitely take the floor on this one.
So the trends in hardware development are going to follow the traditional industry, not the crypto industry. Yes, in a post-COVID world, you are going to see people looking at other countries for manufacturing. Countries like Germany. So one of my clients is actually based in Germany. They're producing a line of very small electronics control boards for TVs in Germany. And they are getting a grant from the German, one of the regions in Germany, they're getting some sort of a grant for doing manufacturing there. This kind of stuff is what spurs a lot of the manufacturing. Within the US and Canada, there have been significant grants already given to parties to bring some of their production from China to the US. So the things you'll see in the US is you'll see assembly take place in the US. It's actually on par with assembly in China. Sometimes you can even get better discounts or better rates. You will see, you will not see any sort of like board assembly, pick and place machines, any kind of, anything that requires actual machines, you won't really see taking place in the US or in Germany or in the EU, just because that infrastructure is already built out in China. It's dirt cheap, and getting those machines to the US, to the EU, it's not worth it. But
even if it's a national threat?
Yes, even if it's a national threat. Every single GPU card, every single FPGA, everything that is done with military missiles or your TVs or your fridges or your security cameras or your routers, it's all taking place in China. But assembly will take place in other areas, and that's the first step. And then slowly, as government grants are given, more of the manufacturing infrastructure will be built elsewhere. We know of 3 manufacturers that are building Bitcoin devices, within the US. So I think we're going to see those come to light hopefully within this year, maybe in 2021.
Another thing you need to consider is that a lot of this manufacturing, produces a lot of pollution, and no one wants to live near these things, especially in Europe. So that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind. The pollution these heavy industry factories create. I've been to China, and it's very, very, very heavy pollution. I don't want to live near that.
Yeah.
Are all the manufacturers in Shenzhen and like Canon is in Wuhan, or is it spread out?
There are some that are clustered in Shenzhen, but it's spread out in different regions. So Wuxi has its own division, Chengdu, some places in Shanghai. It's pretty spread out. I would say that most of your traditional assembly lines are actually clustered near Hong Kong and near Shenzhen.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then I had actually recording a podcast earlier today with another miner. Made a really good point that wasn't on my radar before speaking with him, is that like the level of specialization that exists, like from a trade standpoint in China, people just working on one specific function of one part of one piece of hardware doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, apparently. And that's something I'm ignorant about and talked about with one person today, but it's something that gives me pause and being bullish on that chip manufacturing coming outside of China anytime soon. And not to say that it will never happen, but I think people discount the specialization that exists from a trade standpoint in some aspects of the Chinese supply chain.
Yes, the Chinese supply, but let's just keep in mind that all the chips are literally not made in China. So like they're all made in Taiwan or in Korea.
Taiwan or
yeah. So the supply chain in China, the manufacturing, the heavy industry is all in China, and that's where all the specialization of all these just one person that puts the same little thing in the same place for 100,000 times a day, and it's polluting the whole entire area of these are this the reality of the situation. It's reality. We don't want these things in our backyard. So we face that issue. We face that challenge.
Not all the chips are actually in Taiwan. So TSMC has global foundries, and TSMC have foundries in Germany. They have foundries in foundries in New York. They have foundries basically globally. and they will actually spread their allocation around the space. So it's actually advantageous for a lot of the altcoin ASIC manufacturers to work directly with the North American providers for silicon. And they have their designs produced by TSMC within North America, or they have their designs produced within EU. There are strategic reasons why you might need that. So just to clarify.
Obviously, manufacturing locally, you have the ability to, in the U.S., avoid the Trump tariff. But like from a cost standpoint, can you produce an ASIC in New York for the same price you can in Taiwan?
You can. So the silicon suppliers will, it actually depends on your business. Number one, it depends on your business, your investors, some of your bank statements, and some of your standing. So if you're a really high risk client, you're not going to get favorable terms. You're not going to get favorable pricing. But if you are a client that has done a lot of business or comes highly recommended or has great manufacturers, the pricing is actually going to be standardized with small variations due to taxes and, either state taxes, local taxes, or, some of those restrictions. So what is, yeah, go ahead.
Another thing that a lot of people in this industry don't keep in mind is that chip foundries, there's not a lot of them. There might be all over in different continents, but there's a lot of phones being created. There's a lot of GPUs being created. There's a lot of industries that need these foundries. So chip foundries, they kind of want to create phones first and foremost before mining chips. Like it's and the phones make more money as well. So there's also a long lead time before some of these chips are made for ASICs. And that's something that everyone needs to consider. And the amount of phones and the amount of new AI chips and all these machine learning stuff chips is also going to make things a little bit more difficult for ASIC manufacturers in terms of how long it's going to take before an chip foundry creates their chip.
Satoshi's fixed this.
I'm certainly not talking to the hardware guys as regularly as I was 4 weeks ago, but still maintain regular contact. And obviously there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in terms of production runs and availability and timelines for shipments. And without question, the North American customers are always back of the queue or second in line behind the sort of preferred Chinese customers. So I don't think you'll ever get the transparency out of the hardware guys in terms of how impactful this COVID shutdown actually was for their manufacturing runs. And if there was any delays at the foundry level in Asia as a result of this pandemic, I think obviously those tier one customers are going to get prioritized, even if they weren't at the front of the queue prior to COVID. So it's hard to say whether or not there will be commercial scale runs of the new gen hardware available in May and June and July as expected, but I think there will be some significant delays. And I'm bullish for a non-China ASIC, but in reality, I'm not sure it will happen. But as a individual that's been out there deploying significant capital into hardware over the past couple of years, when that's 75% of your capex, I think the market is ripe for a North American manufacturer, especially if you could do it on like a fixed cost model or a cost plus model that removes some of the volatility tied to price swings and ASIC pricing. So it'll just foster further industrialization, institutionalization of this sector and ongoing investment.
Yeah, we have a couple new people here. Should we? What's up, Jason? What's up, Chase? Should we get a quick intro there, and then we can keep going on with this bullish and bearish?
Sure.
Jason, what's up, man?
Guys.
Yo, what's up, Chase?
Hey guys, what's going on? Sorry I'm late here. I was tied up with a handful of things, but thanks for hosting this.
No worries.
Yeah,
We were
of
just going
course.
over bullish or bearish on non-China ASICs. Maybe you guys have an opinion on it, or just share some of background on your company.
Sure. I have a company called Crusoe Energy. We utilize gas at the wellhead to mine Bitcoin and also we do a number of other sort of high performance compute cloud services that we're sort of in the process of building and rolling out. Am I bullish or bearish non-Chinese ASICs? Right, short-term bearish, long-term to be determined. I don't know. I think there's a limited supply of kind of the most cutting edge silicon, and it's definitely controlled by the Chinese manufacturers. But
can I ask a clarifying question on that? What do you guys think the over under is on a non-current ASIC? Someone who doesn't have particular market share today. What are the chances that there's a new entrant who has let's just say 25% or more of ASIC market share 12 to 24 months from now? Chinese or non?
12 to 24 is probably too short of a timeline, but you push that out.
I'll take 100 to 1 on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the issue is you have to really, it's a game of scale, right? You have to, if someone wants to be competitive, they have to be willing to commit 250 million probably to just kind of being, in the ballpark of competitiveness. And, there's a lot of other, I think, trade secret kind of knowledge that, already has been established by, the biggest and best, and, it's a game of efficiency. So not coming in right away with all of those efficiencies, puts you a few steps behind. And, I think it also makes it a challenge to, it makes it a challenge because you're solving technical challenges and you're also requiring that massive upfront capital investment, right? So I think, I don't know, makes it tough.
Yeah, I think the playing field gets a little leveled as the physics of these chips sort of hits ahead, right? Can't go much further than we are now, and then once you get to the point where you can't go any further, I think you're going to see much more pure competition at that level.
Are you guys bullish and bearish on SBI? Making a competitive rig, or do you think Layer 1's going to go public with the rig they said?
Bearish.
Like, who are these non-China manufacturers that could potentially create a rig in the next 24 months?
Samsung and Intel.
But I don't think they're going to touch the space, right? It's just,
Samsung already has a crypto ASIC. They've been all over the place already, talking with a lot of the hosting providers. Samsung will come out with a dedicated device that they brand and that they market. Intel already has had something internally in their R&D team for almost a year. It remains to be seen whether they will turn that into a pure product, because they really like the revenue streams from Canaan and from some of their other clients. So they don't want to compete with any of their clients ever. So it remains to be seen whether they would go and do that as a standalone product.
No opinions?
Wow, everyone went quiet. That's sorry
All
to
right,
shut down your
bullish or bearish on shitcoin mining? I think we should just go to Ethan for this first, since you're well experienced there.
Wait, are you gonna back me up here, or are you just gonna let me stand here on my own?
I mean,
You
I'm
first, then
bullish
Whit.
on. Yeah, go for it, Ethan.
I'm gonna take a couple drinks because I think there are some projects with value. So I'm gonna show a couple altcoins here. Like,
Ethan, how much
What are the
whiskey have
shots?
you been drinking, man? How
Let me
much whiskey?
see.
Ethan's been drinking.
not
I'm
too
gonna
much
hold you
yet.
accountable.
The Woodbridge.
We saw a lot of like great ASICs come out in late 2018, early 2019 for things like Decred, Zcash, Dash, Litecoin. We haven't seen a lot of those ASICs come out for altcoins since then. I mean, we see the one with Nervos coming out, but really like the new ASICs for altcoins has kind of died out. So I think like a lot of the people that got in early with those ASICs have seen even greater returns than some of the Bitcoin miners because not like no new hash rate has been coming to those markets. There was kind of that initial run up of ASICs coming out for those altcoins, but since then the manufacturers have seemingly lost interest in creating new Equihash miners or X11. You may see the odd one, but for the most part those industries are set based on the existing ASICs. So do I think like new manufacturers are going to come out? Probably no. Like for the existing ones, there's little incentive. There's way more money to be made in SHA-256, but I think there is still like a future for some of those people that have invested in shitcoin mining because they're protected from not an ever increasing hash rate that we see on the Bitcoin network.
Gideon says SHA-256 or die.
Well, I mean, so obviously I'm bullish on shitcoin mining. It would be counterintuitive to hash rate operating systems core product to be bearish. Yeah, I need to go get some. I've got to. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's 5:30 in the morning here. So,
all right, you get the pass. Maybe
the real bull case that I think for all mining outside of Bitcoin is for privacy coins. It's counterintuitive to buy your privacy coins, but if you're going to be mining anything aside from Bitcoin, privacy coins make the most sense. Obviously, again, where the world is right now, who knows what's going to be tracked and what's not going to be tracked in the very near future. A lot of miners focus on privacy coins because that's your untraceable way to accumulate those coins in mass. And that as long as there is the possibility for all of our spending to be tracked more than it already is, right? Like if you're spending money on any of your credit cards, all of those transactions, your transaction history is being sold to the highest bidder, insurance companies, healthcare providers, people of that nature. But, I would say bullish long-term on short-term and long-term on mining of privacy coins.
I think a lot of these a lot of the ASICs for these altcoins that were coming out a couple of years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, were very profitable. But I think a lot of the developers of these altcoins caught up to the game and saw what was going on. So they actually became a little bit smarter. And when they saw a spike in the hash rate, they changed the algorithm. So a lot of these now the ASIC, Bitcoin that might just changed overnight when the devs decide like, look, let's change the algorithm because there's ASICs now in our system. So
yeah. Just to jump in on that. So like CKB is a perfect example. Most people don't know what CKB is. I'm not going to show it.
I know what CKB is. Pulling is the biggest CKB miner.
There you go. Okay. So CKB set out with the idea that they wanted to get a user base through GPU miners first. And then they anticipated the evolution into into FPGAs and ASICs in future iterations. They have no intention of changing the algorithm per the conversation that I've had with the team. And there are others that feel the same way. Yes, there are tribes within shitcoin mining that get butthurt when ASICs come on a network. But if there's economic incentive, ASICs will be created. That's what mining is. I mean, mining is a profit-driven endeavor. So if there is the ability for an ASIC to be put out, like look at Handshake. Handshake is a perfect example. Handshake launched, and how fast was it before more advanced mining equipment was available for it? You know, if there's a project that people believe in and there's hype on a project, it doesn't even have to really be mined for that long before an ASIC is out. And sometimes there's an ASIC ready, even though it's a GPU mineable coin right when it launches. So
yeah, I mean that's what most of these new coins are trying to do.
You guys, we gotta get off the shitcoin talk.
We can cut
There's
it.
just
We can
too
cut
much
it. That's
shitcoin
fine.
talk.
Wait.
Okay,
It's still interesting in terms of tech. I mean, it's not a shitcoin talk. I mean, it's
sure, but it is Bitcoin.
Okay, but what about like the Bitcoin maxis on this call? Like, if you saw that
feeling pretty Bitcoin maxi.
All right,
Hold on.
I'll step in.
Okay, somebody like Chase or Wes that you guys always mine or maybe mine SHA-256. Like, if a Z11 was more profitable than an S17, is that just like you won't touch it because it's not Bitcoin?
I'll speak for myself, not anybody else, but I think you got to think about this long term, and this is something I've written about quite a bit. Like, opportunity cost comes into play at some point, especially with the market cap. Once the market cap of Bitcoin hits a certain point, you have the opportunity cost of mining something with a great demand for financial services, for people to use UTXOs to do things with them eventually. Yes, right now Bitcoin's, I would even say, niche. Like, it's not mainstream yet, but once it does get there, why would you invest mining capital in altcoins that are competing with Bitcoin for the use case of sound money and money in general? Money is 1/2 of every transaction on the planet. Like, yes, right now, the first 11 years, altcoin mining has been profitable, and it may be for a little bit longer. But if you're thinking 10, 20, 30 years from now, I honestly do not. I think the opportunity cost is going to be too great to decide not to invest in Bitcoin ASICs as opposed to some experimental shitcoin that may be the next Bitcoin, which we have come to find is a pipe dream.
I agree.
Yeah,
I'd go even further, but I would just go even further and say that, like, as a fiduciary, to the folks who help us capitalize the business, to our shareholders, like, can I honestly look them in the eye and say I have a chance of paying off the capex of their hardware if I buy an ASIC that doesn't mine Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think I echo some of those sentiments around mining is inherently a risky business, and you kind of are exposed to significant beta of the underlying asset that you're mining, and that's only enhanced with if you get into speculative mining into many different altcoins. I think that's if that's the risk that you want to take, that's great. I'm supportive of that. I think there's a lot of interesting altcoin projects out there. It's just not kind of what we're set up to do, and I think from that standpoint, I think we're Bitcoin's a pretty risky commodity asset as it is. We just don't really have a ton of interest in going out further on the risk curve. The nice part about Bitcoin too is it's the most developed ecosystem as well. So from a financial markets perspective, there's ways to protect a lot of your downside risk, whether it's through some sort of hedging mechanism. I think you have a lot of more interesting financial products that are popping up around the space, whether it's things like hash power contracts that BitUda is putting forth, or the options market is starting to become more liquid, enabling you to kind of hedge it in some capacity and actually create a sustainable long-term business.
I think I'll add to that. I agree, and partly to your point, Harry, is at Bitfarms, like running a public company, once you set out to capitalize your business with external capital managed by professional money managers, whether it be institutional or retail, it's sort of a dead stop if you mention the word altcoin. Like, you've got to go after the market leader, the largest marketplace, the most liquid asset class that exists in this cryptocurrency world. And in addition, it also comes down to it's a great value prop if you've got the size i.e., small scale and dynamics and flexibility to be able to take advantage of those outsized economic returns. Flipping hash power from one protocol to another, or targeting hardware to mine other altcoins. But once you're doing, Bitfarms is a public company, so it's all public disclosure. There's got about 800 petahash of self-mining. Once you've got that size and scale to be moving hash power into BCH or SV, like you become a real player and a significant component of the market. And so it's one thing to impact the difficulty moving hash power around like that, and which obviously plays out in your economics, as well as trying to monetize your production. So it's this is really only one coin of choice, in my opinion.
Okay, let me stir the pot a bit more here. So let's say BSV or BCH is a little bit more profitable to mine than Bitcoin, and you can immediately convert and get back to USD or Canadian dollars. Like, do you as a shareholder have an obligation, or to represent your shareholders, do you have an obligation to mine BSV because there's a bump in USD if you liquidate it right away? Or like, how do you allocate your SHA-256 hash rate to these different chains?
Let me quickly add to that. We have on Poolin auto hash rate switch, which automatically switches all the hash rate if you choose to mine. If you choose this option, it switches all the hash rate to BCH or BSV, and then we sell it on the back end, and you make more profit and you receive Bitcoin. So already pools are taking advantage of variations of profits or whatever. So that's the way we handle that.
Yeah, but
that only works until the first attack, right?
No, we've been doing this since we started, basically.
I know, but that only works until those chains are attacked at a certain point. Like if you keep doing.
Most profit switching algorithms are going to account for the number of ASICs switching. So I'm not sure how it is for Poolin, but at least with BTC.com, they account for how much of their total workers are switching over. And for a lot of the independently designed and run profit switching algorithms, they're accounting for how many ASICs you're actually switching over. So it's not just like dumb swarm mentality where you click a button and you switch 95% of your hash rate over. It actually does the mathematics before the switch. It accounts for, hey, what happens if I switch over 20,000 S9s and keep 10,000 S17s on Bitcoin. So it does all of that and finds the most profitable point for you, and then we'll switch.
But there's a market microstructure implication as well, which is that if you're going to be, let's just say 40 or 50% of the coins that are mined on an alternate chain on the same algorithm, all those coins are getting sold. Whereas if you're a miner of Bitcoin, not every one of those Bitcoin is going to be sold into the open market. So I would expect to see there be some price suppression in those alternate chains, which would at least work to close the spread between the alternate chain mining profitability versus the Bitcoin mining profitability.
That would be the case if there weren't so many religious supporters of both Bitcoin Cash as well as Bitcoin.
How many of them are there really though? At the end of the day,
7.
There's substantial amounts of.
Bitcoin SV has over 1,500 religious supporters. Bitcoin Cash
1,500.
Yes, over 3,500.
I don't know. I wouldn't call them religious supporters. I would say just there's miners on the network.
Yeah.
That mine.
You have. I guess
their
that's
problem.
true. Yeah, they're just miners. But you
that's
also
not
have
our problem.
Yes, you do have these religious supporters though. So these are people that don't care about price. They're constantly shilling the coin. They're just dedicated to the crypto, and they have their own what would you call it? Their own bubble of isolation. Yes. Yeah. They just they don't listen to any reason or rationale. And these kinds of people
tribalism.
Ideological miners.
Can they say how long can they say solvent?
Can we move on?
That's
no, wait.
Agreed.
Before we move on, this is a question I've just as a podcast. Whenever I have miners on or other people in the know, like, do we see chain attacks, like hash power attacks against chains? Like, it hasn't happened that much up to this point. And again, we're very early on in this game, only 11 years in. Like, does that come into play at some point? People start playing dirty.
You won't
I mean, that
see it
has
in
happened, right?
SHA-256. It has happened.
Yeah,
Yeah,
smaller
You will
chains.
but
not.
I mean, it's happened in SHA-256 chains, though, right? I mean,
It
it's
has
SHA
not happened
no,
in
SHA
SHA-256 chains in the last, I think, 3 years. We've reached a point where it won't happen to the SHA-256 chains.
Why?
Bitcoin. The last one was Bitcoin
No, no,
Gold
no.
that was attacked.
Yeah, Bitcoin Gold, but that wasn't that
That's
was
not
within the last
SHA-256.
3
That's
years.
a GPU
Oh, no,
coin.
no, no.
Doing all that switching of hash rate, and we're making money off these chains. Why would we attack it? Or why would
Good point.
anyone attack it if they're making money off it? Not
It
us.
has to be like an economic, like if you can short Bitcoin Cash or BSV to the volume, then it may be a possibility. Like, because if somebody can put that big of a levered position and then they go to a giant mining farm that has 1.5, 2 exahash, and economically it makes sense, then it could happen. But until you can
The
take that
second
big
that
levered short
we-
position, it's not going to happen.
Any
Depends
other
up
any other
here who has
SHA-256
actually attacked a chain.
It's gonna happen if anyone gets it's gonna happen. If anyone gets the short interest built out or some financial derivatives for non-BTC SHA-256, like that is going to happen. Not that I would do that.
I disagree with that. It used to happen early on in between 2010 and 2014, simply because there wasn't a lot of eyes and regulation around cryptocurrency. There wasn't a lot of exchanges. There wasn't, the infrastructure built out to actually say, hey, this coin that has been mined is considered property. Law enforcement wasn't involved. You could get away with a lot in the early days. Now we're coming to cryptocurrency as a whole 10 years later. And if you do institute a malicious 51% attack against a chain, there are legal repercussions. So the exchange is going to blacklist your coins. The exchange is going to come after you. The exchange that has suffered. The coin itself, in whatever developer group that supports that coin may come after you. The community may come after you. Law enforcement may get involved. If you look at Bitfinex's hack, all those coins that were stolen are completely blacklisted.
But that's totally different.
That's different, yeah.
Look at the Bitcoin gold attack.
You're right.
Most of those coins are blacklisted.
I mean, that's like saying you can't sell drugs and no one does it. Like, if there's a profit motive, someone's going to do it. Like, the second the financial instruments get built out for any alt SHA-256, expect the shorts.
So the difference with drugs is that people, that there's always going to be a market for that. But with crypto specifically, if it gets flagged, if it gets blacklisted, how do you convert that to USD? No one is actually going to pay USD for that coin if they can't actually use it on an exchange or send it to someone else without it being flagged.
Atomic swap into Monero and then buy BTC, sell it like.
Not all coins support atomic swap, and not all coins support that. It's actually not as foolproof as most people think. I mean, I've been involved in 3 court cases.
I don't buy government ban this. I don't buy government ban this. Sorry.
I don't think there's any Bitcoin miner that's religious enough to go out and 51% attack BSV or the other Bs. I mean, it's gonna happen. Luckily, we got time to.
It should have happened already. If there was the religious part, if that was one of the motives, it would have already happened.
Why would it happen? Why would it happen if there's a hash rate? All the pools do hash rate auto switch, so all the miners are benefiting off BCH BSV.
Yep. No one
so
wants
why would we attack coin that's making more money for the miners? The miners ultimately want to make more money. And that's what pool operators do. We provide these auto hash rate switches, and they make more money when we switch some to BCH BSV. They're happy. We're happy. Why are we going to attack something that makes us more money? Doesn't make any sense, does it?
You're assuming it'll be a pool operator, but
now I will say that 51% attacks have happened due to stupidity. So Ethereum Classic is the best example. An ASIC manufacturer automatically switches over way too much hash rate onto Ethereum Classic and accidentally 51% attacks it and then returns the coins. So these do happen, but it's usually due to stupidity or ignorance. It's not due to malicious reasons. And so it's important to separate those two, because it is possible to 51% attack a brand new chain just by deploying way too much hash power way too quickly.
Sometimes you just don't care, though. I mean, to be honest with you, they just destroy the coin. They don't care.
Yeah.
And
trolls exist.
Real quick, I think Harry is about to peace out. So
be long Bitcoin. It's a great day to be involved with, with all the folks on this stream and with all the folks in the industry. We can get into the weeds on all this other stuff, but none of that precludes the point that it is great to be here tonight. I appreciate Bitcoin Magazine, and I look forward to mining straight on through this halving.
Let's go.
Amen.
All right, thanks everyone.
Cheers.
Please feel free to grab me anywhere after this, especially on the Twitter.
Cheers, man.
Do we want to keep talking about attacking all 256 chains, or do we want to talk about something else?
Let's move on to something else, I'd say.
Our next our
Agreed.
next bullish or bearish was leverage or hedge. So we talked about this a bit earlier, but as a miner, should you be leveraging up, taking out loans to buy ASICs or collateralizing Bitcoin to pay your electricity bill, or should you be hedging? Okay, so
I think you should be hedging. I think I touched on this earlier, but the asset class itself is it's a volatile. It's like people that leverage. It's kind of like a Texas hedge, right? Large successful upstream oil and gas companies don't also buy oil futures because they know their revenue stream is denominated in oil, and being able to hedge their production and understand what their revenue stream is going to look like, I think is important component to being around for the long term. So.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to say leverage for sure. I mean, this is a world where capital is scarce. If you have ambitions of being a large scale real player in this business with the capital required to sort of squeeze margin where others can't, in terms of vertically integrating and being really efficient at delivering new infrastructure on a cost basis, and making sure that every one of those miners is plugged in and hashing the way it's designed to. Leverage, obviously, the landscape of lenders is pretty small, and the capital is expensive, but it's not like there's a ton of equity out there with the structures and operators that would be home to that capital. So leverage, just because growth is paramount in a world where we're talking about a difficulty bump of 11% in 4 days, and having 4 weeks later. Hedging, as it relates to mining in particular, I don't think the market's there yet. It's too expensive. We're all in this building business. We're all in this building businesses to withstand the sort of the doldrums at 11 and 12 cents per terahash. I always go back to mining economics because I'm a financial guy, in hopes that we can capitalize on the weeks and months where BTC is ripping and hash rate is struggling to keep pace. And
I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, why give away the upside when it's so expensive, given the infancy of the marketplace and the hedging options available to us?
So I should actually clarify my point. I think you can actually have leverage and hedging going hand in hand. But I think the key is how you denominate your leverage, right? So if you're borrowing money in USD, or if you're borrowing money in terms of BTC, that changes the picture quite a bit. So your revenue stream is denominated in Bitcoin, And I think where people get into trouble is when they sort of try to lever up their Bitcoin position, so that Bitcoin inherently is a volatile asset. I mean, that's just kind of it's been true since day one. So if you are in any sort of position where any sort of the thing with leverage is it sort of cuts both ways, and if you're in a position where a 20% drawdown in Bitcoin is going to completely wipe out all of your equity in your business, that's not a very good position to be in. But if you can effectively hedge yourself in a capacity that enables you to borrow money in a non-dilutive capacity, but sort of hedges your production downside, and you're expending that money in terms of USD and sort of hedging your production so that you will at least earn some sort of USD return and then sort of capture some upside. I think that's an interesting approach as well.
Hey, Wes, do you mind if I ask you a follow-on question? I'm just really interested in this leverage versus hedge situation, because we've been actively looking at leverage opportunities, but the market just doesn't seem very favorable. It's super expensive money. And if you've been mining for a long time, I mean, I started in late 2015. Some of you may have been mining longer than that. We've been running, legacy gear and need to upgrade. And we've been prudent with our crypto stores. We have we're small compared to probably a lot of people on this call. I have a waste to energy plant that I built in Raleigh, North Carolina. We take trash tires and turn them into power, and that's what we mine off of. It's about 6 megawatts, 6.17 megawatts of power. But I've been doing that since 2016, and we've been looking at it and saying, we need to make a significant investment in S17s or something like that going into the halving, because we're hitting the wall in regards to just profitability, even with zero cost power.
Yeah.
I mean, I have expenses, OpEx, but power is not one of them. So the lending sucks though, even for someone who's got assets.
You have 6 megawatts with free power?
We do, but I still have IT expense and repairs and other peripheral stuff, but the power is free.
I looked at your business a few months back, as I've heard of you guys, and I'm curious to learn more. But the leverage landscape, the swath of lenders available to us. I mean, I funded our business and our growth last year with a $20 million US credit facility, and cast the net to all groups that were willing to extend credit to this sector, and the list was very short, right? There's half a dozen people, and we had a number of those groups in our data room, and chose a lender based out of New York, which has been a very supportive partner for the company. It's expensive capital between the headline interest rate and the warrant package so that's on the corporate side, and that's for an entity that's publicly traded and audited by one of the big four with governance and regulatory oversight. Like that adds to the cost of capital reduction that wouldn't be available to most private miners. I'm sure most groups on the call here today that have actual mining operations are talking to all the same guys that are talking about equipment finance right now, and it's super expensive. It really is. But put yourself in their shoes. It's a new business, a new industry with very few lenders willing to evaluate and extend credit secured by the hardware itself in this asset class, and it's sort of just emerged, over the last several months. And if you were trying to underwrite a hardware purchase for a miner you've got, ignore all the operational risks, just talk about the miner's ability to service the debt with the volatility in the mining business itself. It's a very, very, very tough asset class to underwrite. What do you need from a down payment standpoint, loan to values, returns, amortization periods. Like you need 15 to 20% minimum return in a 12-month period in order to justify the risk of underwriting this equipment. So it will continue to evolve. The swath of lenders out there is very small, but and if you're looking at ways to finance your business in that manner, in terms of like the S17 or the M20S or the new gen, the S19 or the M30, you can make it work even at that cost of capital. Especially if you've got 0 cent, it's like free power, 6 megawatts in California. But for most miners, paying, I don't know, at the industrial scale, 4 cents is probably middle of the road. So if you use that as the benchmark, most miners will break even for the 12 months required to service that debt, maybe make a little bit of margin, but fully secure the upside once it's repaid for 13 months and onwards. Which, when you look at the evolution of hardware and the efficiency or the lack of efficiency bumps in the new generation hardware coming out in the next few months or next several weeks versus last year's edition versus the editions before the year before that, I think you'll get a lot more shelf life, and these sort of credit options will turn out to be quite lucrative as long as you're a low-cost operator. That's a long-winded answer, but happy to expand if warranted.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's I completely agree with what you just said. Like, and it depends on if you're getting credit lines specifically, like what are you buying with that debt, and you got to make sure you have productive assets outside of the miners. Yeah.
And Jason, if you want some introductions, just message me after.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're constantly approached by people who are sitting on tons of power, like mothballed power, all over North America. Nobody can get money for hardware, so they come to groups like mine and say, loan us money so we can, buy this gear, and then I'm looking at it for my own personal use as well. It's just not an easy place to borrow money, and I don't mind using leverage, but I look at it like real estate. I always want to put down enough that I can float this thing if times go bad, and it just doesn't work out like that. If Bitcoin pukes, you can really get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, that was the big type of loan that I was talking about, was people posting Bitcoin as collateral and borrowing, USD with Bitcoin posted as collateral to fund their mining operations. In which case, if Bitcoin collapses, you get forced liquidated and you lost all of your collateral posted. That's a really dangerous game to play. And I think that's, a lot of people speculate that was one of the big contributing factors to the the big sell-off that we had in March.
Yeah, it seems to be what all the Chinese miners are doing with Matrix Port right now. Collateralizing 140% Bitcoin, getting out RMB to pay off their electricity bill, which huge speculation on Bitcoin at that price.
Yeah.
And that's likely what drove the crash on March 13th, is because every collateralized crypto-backed loan globally would have been called that in those 4 or 5 hours where we saw this, insane drop in BTC price. So it's one of the things I don't like about ongoing adoption and innovation in this sector is now that you're layering on financial products on top of this, what was designed to be a decentralized currency, maintained by network participants. You're bringing the impacts of financial engineering and crypto-backed loans, as an example, are creating volatility that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
Wes, in the industrial manufacturing space, so part of our business is mining. The other side is an industrial manufacturing waste management business. When we build the waste management component, it's about 25 million bucks each site. And we use EPC contractors, and they put like a warrant or a warranty on everything we do. And it's backed by insurance. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we could put together some kind of like principal protected note for miners that said, look, here's the money you need. You're going to give me a guaranteed return, and you put a floor in it. Like, I can't lose my money, and it's backed by insurance. I wonder if there's a mechanism that we can create to actually enhance, like the conservative lender. He gets his money, he can't lose.
I totally agree.
Famous last words. Can't lose.
Yeah. The problem is,
wait, you may lose, but he won't lose.
Yeah.
So he'll give you. That's what I'm saying. You can lose. You can get fucked. But I'm saying the guy who's lending you the money, he won't lose. I'm just trying to get him to give us the money.
Assuming you can get an underwriter to like an insurance company to underwrite the product, right?
I think the premium would be probably insane.
Astronomical. Yeah.
Maybe.
But I think with some fundamental, like a strong understanding of mining economics, and the fact that things will normalize. This will reflect an equilibrium. The ebbs and flows will be short term, and
the volatility may decline. I expect it to.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into this because it impacts something that I'm doing, but yeah.
Ooh.
You guys, I think it's time for last word.
Yeah.
We've been going for a minute now. Let's start off with our European homies because they've been holding on and suffering. So let's start off with Alejandro first, and then Whit.
Join pooling.
That's it.
Poolin's nervous.
Thanks, Bitcoin Magazine. Thank you, everyone. It was very insightful. It's always very interesting to hear what's going on in the States and in Canada and in North America. Yeah, thanks. I thought there was going to be a little bit more drinking involved, personally, but thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll second most of that. CK, thank you for inviting me on. Ethan, thanks for putting this all together. Big shout out to Bitcoin Mag for this live stream. This was a lot of fun. It's great chatting with everyone, and yeah, I'm happy that I didn't have to shill any shit coins tonight.
Yeah, he did relatively well. Thank you, Ethan. He's the man. All right, next, let's go to Gideon. Last word.
Texas will have 3 gigawatts dedicated to Bitcoin in the next 3 years.
That's nice, man. Join pooling. I'm serious.
Business deal's going down here.
I'm playing.
JP.
Mine on. It'll be a fun 2 months. It's worth it. I think the 2 months are going to be hard, but the next 2 years will be very profitable if you can stick in the game. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Any thoughts, Christy?
Yeah, I think the space is incredibly crazy right now, and I am excited to see what when some of the bigger Fortune 500 start announcing their plans to enter the cryptocurrency space. So it'll be a good time. I'm looking forward to it.
I got to agree. I think that'll be the next wave of adoption and momentum in this sector is as the big guys start showing a real interest and putting their money where their mouth is. But thank you to Bitcoin Magazine. It's been great. I think this is a time in our careers where obviously all heavily invested and maximalists here, and the next 4 to 8 weeks is going to be exciting. So hold your breath and stay safe.
Thanks, Wes. Chase.
Thanks for having me on. Sorry I got here pretty late. But Ethan, thanks for putting this together. I just think it's really cool that we're all part of building this infrastructure that's building the infrastructure for finance the future. And I think it's a really important cause and important mission that everybody's here is a part of.
Sweet. So Marty, you're last, right? No one else? Did I miss anyone? No, Marty.
Ethan.
Jason. Yeah, I mean, I think we should all just take a moment to reflect on like how early we are. Again, I harped on it a couple times throughout this feed. Like we're only 11 years into this, and the fact that we're here talking so intricately about this niche within Bitcoin. I'll drink after the spiel. It's fascinating, and I think it's very important work that everybody on the stream is doing. And I think, like Christy and Wes said, it is going to be, the whole space is going to look completely different once the Fortune 500 companies get into it, and everybody, once this nerd money starts becoming like the big party that everybody wants to be a part of. I don't think we're even ready for how much change is going to happen. I think it's going to surprise us how fast things change and how quickly people sort of come around to Bitcoin.
Awesome. Actually, I forgot. How could I forget Jason? We didn't get your last word, man. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, look, I kind of crashed this just because I'm super interested in mining, and I know enough to be dangerous, and so I appreciate all your thoughts, and I certainly am interested in working with people to develop mechanisms to fund this thing. As we come out of the cellars, and whether it's a public vehicle, SPACs, there's all kinds of different ways that we could raise a lot of money. But I'm super, super bullish mining on mining and Bitcoin. So we'll see what happens.
Word. Well, Ethan, why don't you close it out? I'm not gonna have any last words because I'm not a miner.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone on the call and listening in. I think mining is an area often forgotten about, but it is the infrastructure level of everything else that's being built on this ecosystem. So really important. And Marty didn't say it, so I'm going to steal it from him. But stack hashes. That's all I can say.
All right, nice. Well, this was a lot of fun, guys. I'm gonna end the feed now.